Let's talk about the evolution of old school cycles. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally, and all of our programming is brought to you by you, the people of Patreon. Thank you guys very much for your support. We are brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. If you're in the UK and you need to get your lab work done, then you can get your labs done by Dave. Go to evalbloodanalysis.com. Get your labs done by Dave if you're in the UK. And Strom Sports Nutrition. You can get them both in the UK and the US now. So definitely check them out. Great health stacks, especially for guys on cycle. We are brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. Get all your protein powder, your creatine, your intra workout, and all your other basic bodybuilding needs. Use our code THINK over there to get 10% off and support our programming. Thank you to supplementsource.ca for Canadians. They have great deals that change week to week. Dave, round two, Dave in France. How's it going, man? How's the RV life?
Hot.
Why don't you have the AC on 24 hours a day like a good American would?
It is on, but it's still hot.
Then your AC sucks. You got to crank it, Dave. You got to crank it until it's so cold in there that you need to put on a hoodie and shoes.
Well, it was like that last night, but
Was it?
The problem is at the moment we don't have any front blinds because we had some new ones fitted and they were shit, so we took them down. So unfortunately, we've got a greenhouse effect at the front.
Oh man. By the way, guys, we have a fun topic. We're going to talk about the old school cycles that people used to run. Plus, of course, we're going to tackle all your listener questions. Now, hey, for everybody at home, understand that this program is for educational purposes only. We don't condone the use of any compounds that we discuss here. First and foremost, Dave is an educator. He's educated the UK police, the military. He works in the court systems in the UK. Our goal here is to create a program of harm reduction, Dave, so that people are going to do this stuff, but we want people to be able to stay as safe as possible. And nobody under 18 should be, partaking in any of this. Go to your doctor if you need any medications, all of that. We are not responsible for blah, 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 blah. All that, Dave, all of that. Now that I got that out of the way. Whew. Yeah.
Hi, YouTube.
Oh, seriously, man. Here's the deal. We had a listener who commented, and he was like, man, is there any efficacy to this cycle? This old timer from 30, 40 years ago was saying that, he would run like, what was it? A mil of Deca per week with like, a little bit of D-ball. He would do that for 8 weeks. And then after that, he'd drop all of that. And then he'd run like 4 weeks of, what was it? Winstrol. And that was the entire cycle, and I've heard all sorts of stuff. My dad's friends back in the day, it was like 1 mil or 200 milligrams of Deca every 2 weeks was a cycle. Like that was the entire cycle.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why these old guys are still going is because they've never gone above 500 milligrams a week in their life. It is, whether you want to admit it or not, the reality is that, guys that have maintained. I mean, I know a guy, 70 odd now, Dave. Excellent physique. Cycled for 40 odd years.
Okay.
But, he's always been 500 milligrams.
Let's talk about the evolution of old school cycles.
I mean, I can't talk about the very early days because that's even beyond my time. And I know I'm an old fart. But there's been also, ones people will remember will be the old, it has to be 2-to-1 ratio test to Deca. I mean, I think there's some people still sign up to that now.
So that would have been later. That would have been like, as I was getting into it, that would have been like early 2000s. That was a popular idea.
Another one was you don't stay on the same compound for more than 4 to 6 weeks. So you kept continually changing the compounds.
Oh, you have to like trick the receptors or something?
Yeah, well, that was, I mean, the theory behind it, obviously not quite correct, was that different receptors for different compounds. So you didn't burn a receptor out or it wasn't too tired. There's no weight in that. We know it's one androgen receptor. But there was something to the fact that if you varied the compound, you varied the stressors.
Yeah.
So you were changing the negative stresses that the body was having to deal with, which over the course of a cycle could to some degree be beneficial. Mentally, there was obviously, oh, it's a new drug, it's a new compound, so that always freshened people up when they changed compounds. Kickstarting lasted for a very long time, like oral kickstarts or even high dose kickstarts where people would drop, like a gram and a half in the first week, even though the actual cycle dose was only going to be 500 or 600 mil.
Yeah, so I did both of those things. That was happening when I started, Dave. That was D-ball kickstart for the first 4 to 6 weeks is what people would do. 25, 30 milligrams of D-ball with their 500 test sip cycle, or you would double the amount of test. You're using 1,000 for the first 2 weeks. I think I've come to a conclusion, Dave. So back then, cycles were cut off at that 10-week point. Some really 8 to 12. It was 8 weeks was a shorter length. 12 weeks was pushing it, and then you came off. You did a PCT. You recovered your natural test. So I think that people wanted to get their levels up as quickly as they could. Versus nowadays, it's like, well, you're already on TRT. There's no rush, so let the compound build.
I think probably the biggest change is PCT. I think that's probably the biggest single changes that, a vast majority of people PCT'd. And you did 2 cycles a year, and that was it. And that was the limit of it, because that's all you could get in with a PCT as well, and time off. All you could actually get in was 2 cycles a year. There was the Schick cycles, which we discussed a little bit last week, and I mean, I don't know if he was the first person to push him, but Paul Borison was very influential in doing short, really high-dose cycles with absolutely tons of gear, but also a lot of changing compounds as well. And he would do that, like we said last week, 3 weeks of a millisust every day, and then you'd drop another compound in, and then something else in, and then you were off. And the total duration was 6 weeks.
Okay.
He was very influential in bringing insulin into the marketplace, though it didn't really gain a huge amount of popularity with him. It seemed to sort of start, then disappear, then come back years later. But he was probably the first guy that really pushed the use of growth hormone and insulin together in a cycle format.
Around there, because I think here's another factor. But like now, everything's kind of homogenized. Like the guys, it used to be like, oh, what are the guys in the Middle East doing? They look so dry. What are the guys in England doing versus the U.S.? But now we're all online, and we're all sharing all these ideas. Like everybody's doing, from what I see, more or less very similar cycles everywhere around the world. But back then, you were kind of relegated to who you were learning from in your area.
I mean, a big difference between the States and the UK was the UK used to stop all injectables a couple of weeks out and running on orals.
Okay, yeah.
Whereas the States used to come in on injectables, and there was always this thing that the US look was fuller.
Yeah.
But not as grainy. And the UK look was grainier and sort of a bit dirtier in that sense, a bit rawer. But that was because we didn't have the fullness, because we weren't on the injectables. We were running on just Winstrol. So we were dry, but we didn't have that big full belly pop. I mean, there's definitely been, and to this day, I think there's still some things. Germany, if I'm right with this, and I'm sure we've got some viewers from Germany who will confirm this, that they work on the terminal half-life, which is a lot shorter than the regular half-life that a lot of us work on.
Okay.
So, they're working on test 10 being a half-life of 4.5 days.
I don't know about that. I'd have to ask like Roman Fritz because guys I've talked to in Germany, they're learning from like everybody, the same place everybody.
Yeah, I think things like that. Exactly. And with the internet, and particularly with this like us, and I'm not just saying us because there's loads that do it now, but this openness discussion around what goes on. People have been exposed to lots of different approaches, and as always does with these things, you will get these trends and fads that pop up for a while, and everyone goes mad on it. But then it settles down to what people see repeatedly working.
Right.
And so there are things that come in that are new that do stay the course and do get embedded into cycle protocols, but there'll always be the fatty things that come in and last 6 months to 12 months and then people give up on them. I mean, DMP was massive for so long, and then it sort of died a death, and no one really bothers with it that much now. It's not something you hear a lot of.
It got so popular again back in, and part of it I think was there was a guy who was promoting it and selling it, so you know, and because of that he was doing a lot of content on it, and it became new again because there was a whole generation of guys and the girls in the gym that hadn't had any experience with it, versus the older people were like, yeah, we've been there, done that. But it was like, oh, this is new, this is different, we hadn't heard about this, so it was exciting. I see things like that happen all the time, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to the days of Robbie Robinson. Robbie Robinson was well known for doing Decker only cycles.
Okay.
You know, this is 70s. And then that came back into fay for a while, and there were a couple of people that were big on promoting that, but it was sort of bastardized and twisted a little bit because a lot of people can't cope with it. So there was yeah, it's Decker only, but with some D-ball. So there was some testosterone being introduced into it. But you know, that was something that Robbie swore by, did a lot of. I don't think it was widespread popular. But then people look back at physiques from the past and like, you know, how did he look like that? And then they start, because now they talk about their cycles where they didn't do back then because it was
true.
And it's, oh, well, I used to do Decker only. Oh, that must be the secret. And it's like, no, probably his genetics and his training, but no, you know.
Yeah, I would say that we're in a pretty good place now. Things, I'll tell you what, after the front loading phase kind of wore off, I saw the phase where everybody started pushing really high doses. It became like Boston Lloyd came out and he was talking about doing these massive cycles. And at the time, people were looking at him and they're like, oh, well, he survived and he, was big. I could do that too. And I would say that there were a number of people that were like, yeah, 3 grams is totally normal. And it was just average guys were running these really crazy cycles. We've seen backlash to that, I think, now. And now it seems like it's the opposite, man. We have guys who are like, how little can I take? That seems to be the new trend, is more average guys that are, more recreational lifters, less competitors. And they're saying, well, what's the least that I can use to get a good result, Can
I ask you a question?
Of course.
Serious one.
Yeah.
About Boston.
Okay.
Do you think he genuinely did the 10-gram cycles he claims?
Man, that's a great question, isn't it? I mean, it sure was.
Having known what 4.5 and 5 felt like, and having known what I could achieve on 4.5 and 5, I always struggled to understand, one, how he could cope with 10 gram.
Yeah.
I felt like dog shit most of the time, to be fair. And two, why just that sheer level of anabolics didn't give him more. I mean, he did grow. I'm not saying he didn't grow, but he was never what we'd call as a mass monster. I mean, he was never knocking on the doors of being a scary freak. So, did he really do it? We know he ran substantial, but did he really do that?
I'll say this. So, I forget his coach's name when he was very young. It's right on the tip of my tongue. I know one of our listeners will comment with it, so I want to say thank you to whoever it is, or how many ever of you can remember his name.
It's an age thing with Scott. You've just got to bear with him. It's because he's so old now.
That's what it is. But from what I understood, that coach had always been a big proponent of super high doses. He would take on young bodybuilders that had good potential, and he would gas them up hard with a lot of gear, a lot of orals, and it was a combination of all that I think that's what he was brought up in, so I mean, was it 10 grams? I don't know. It sure did, it sure did get him on a lot of podcasts and get people listening to him because it was so extreme at that time. But I am sure that he gassed it harder than most. I'll say that,
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt he ran high doses. I was just curious as to whether you actually thought it was quite that
It's a good question, man. I guess we'll never know. Rest in peace to him.
It was 5s and 6 maybes, but maybe not quite into the double digits like he said. But it was his marketing ploy. I mean, he had a few ways of creating interest.
Yeah, and that was
saying it
one
was
of
my
them.
cup of tea, but at the end of the day, it was his thing. He did it how he wanted to do it at the end of the day, and that's down to him. But yeah, he had a few ways of marketing himself, and I often wondered that maybe that was more marketing than reality. But you never know. I mean, people do crazy shit.
Yeah, yeah, love him or hate him. Rest in peace to Boston Lloyd, and rest in peace to all the other crazy bodybuilders out there that we've had through the years who have really pushed things. Because it's definitely, there's a certain mentality that I think shows up in our sport where people just want to take it to that extreme.
It's an extreme sport at its core. It is extreme. Nothing exceeds like excess when it comes to bodybuilding.
Well,
Bigger,
leading us
harder,
up.
stronger, leaner.
Yeah, leading us to present day, though, I feel like we are in a better place. I do believe some of the big name pros that I've talked to that have claimed to use lower doses, and I've seen moderate doses lower than that. Like, we don't have to push it, to that absolute extreme, especially if a guy has good genetics. They were cut out for the sport, so that's a whole other conversation, though. Anything else we should mention here, Dave, in the old school roundup?
Old school stuff.
Yeah. We're skipping over the whole SARM epidemic because that's okay.
Yeah, we're not going there.
The pro hormone epidemic and the peptide epidemic.
The only good thing about the
2012.
SARM thing was the SARMs that weren't SARMs, like Superdrol.
Yeah, there was that. And hey, I'm willing to give another try to YK11, especially the injectable version. I just talked to a pro that we've had on the podcast in the last several months who was telling me he ran it for the first time and he had a good experience, got very strong off of it, didn't get a negative appetite effect from it. I don't believe that you're going to get any kind of myostatin benefits from it, but it basically is, from what I understand, based off of a steroid backbone. So,
yeah, it is.
There's some legitimacy to it,
Yeah, it's horses for courses, isn't it? They all have their places, and I think the SARM Moon created that area for people that were too cautious or wary to go fully anabolic, and the peptides gave people that were even more wary an option to get into performance enhancing drugs without actually really getting into drugs as such.
True.
And I mean, some of the peptides stood the time. I mean, some of the growth hormone secretaries are viable. They're not super impressive. And the only reason I think they've been out of the market is because the cost of growth hormones got so reasonable. Yeah. I think if growth hormone was still as expensive as it used to be, they would still be quite popular. I think it's a pricing, it's a financial factor on that one, really.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, guys, if you have any thoughts, I'm sure that all you at home have your old school cycles that you used to run or new people that ran, comment below. We'd love to hear it, and comment with your questions. Dave, we have so many questions for this episode. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to all of them. There were I think 40 questions lined up. That means that if we did 30 seconds between each question that it would only take us 40 minutes to get through the show, and we know that's not going to happen. Yeah. All right. So, like I said, guys, leave us questions for the next one. And if we don't get to your question, comment it again. No offense to you. It's not personal. And if you're new here, we'd love to have you along for all of our shows, guys. We have several different bodybuilding podcasts that come out each week. We've got this, gear-focused one. We've got the coaching Q&A. We've got Ron and Dusty. We just have an interview with Jordan Hutchinson that's the day we record this, it's coming out. So you guys will already seen it by the time this is released. It's time for an update on the Superdrol Breakdown. People loved the Anadrol breakdown we did. I feel like we did Superdrol not too long ago, but I don't know. Does everybody else want us to do Superdrol again? I feel like it wasn't that long ago, was it, Dave?
I think it was. It all blends into one.
Yeah. I thought it was around the Olympia, so that's last October. It's, going on a year, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if I've learned anything new about Superdrol since then. Have you? Yeah. Okay. Got to ask, guys. That was the old school dude. Yeah, he had he was doing very low gear back then, the Deca D-ball cycle switching to Winstrol. And then somebody mentioned Paul Borison too, promoting chemical warfare.
If you haven't heard of Paul,
yeah,
he's part of steroid law that I feel is a worthwhile journey to just explore.
But don't follow the cycles.
Completely fucking bonkers. But
Yeah.
mad genius, no doubt a clever man, ahead of his time in lots of ways. Unfortunately, a victim of his own success to a degree, and he lost his grip on reality, I would say, towards the end. And there is things about Paul at the back end of his life that were not great, but he definitely talked the talk and walked the walk, and pushed the boundaries of what we thought was viable within anabolics, definitely.
Okay, so here's a bunch of them. Hey guys, you say the problem with injectable Winstrol is because it's suspended in water, and the problem with sterility, which I completely understand. However, what about everything else that's water-based, such as growth hormone, L-Carnitine, glutathione, peptides, etc.? And why do these not have as high a risk of infection? Yeah, so that's there. I could. So Dave, we have like injectable L-Carnitine. From what I understand, is not water-based. They're using a solvent for that. With peptides, you're mixing that as you go with bacteriostatic water, and it's
Which
such
then
a
is alcohol-based water. So just so people understand the difference between like a sodium solution that you'd have in like an IV and backwater. Backwater has added alcohol, so it stays sterile within multiple needles going into it, for want of I can't think of a proper terminology. Whereas an IV solution does run the risk of contracting a bacteria if it's multiple use, which is why you should be looking at biostatic if you're going to be using a water-based dissolved compound for multiple injections. If it's a single application, it's not so much of an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and also too, like if you're using growth, it's a lot smaller of an amount. You know, you might growth hormone may be like a tenth or a quarter of a mil of water, and it might be going sub-Q versus jamming in 1 cc, you know, into deep into a muscle. And not to mention too, those suspensions are very painful. You know, there's a lot of irritation, the microscopic little crystals that are rubbing around in your muscle, and that pain alone can cause your body to wall it off and create an infection. In fact, you can easily get an infection from like super high dosed gear. Somebody had asked us, like, what do you guys think about a 600 milligram per mil compound? Number one, yeah, you've either got a lot of pain with that, or you're using super solvents that are going to cause a lot of inflammation, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm wary of anything over 300, if I'm honest.
Anything over that, you are using super solvents to maintain that, you know?
Or it's underdosed. Which
Yeah,
is the
there's that. Yeah. We had a question about underdosed gear. Okay, so this is an older guy. He says, hey, Scott and Dave, I'm about 60 years old he says, I'm about to be 60 on September 3rd. My birthday is September 6th.
You sending your own questions in now, Scott?
No, my birthday is September 6th. It's coming up.
Oh.
I've been doing TRT for about 2+ years now. I'm in decent shape most of my life and hard labor, LOL, construction work. I'm not trying to do any shows or anything, but I'd like to try to get into my best shape that I can for the next 10, 20, 30 years of my life. He's going to be ripped at 90, apparently. Now with TRT therapy, I've noticed after 2 years of use, exceptional changes in joint pain, back pain, and just all around wanting to do stuff. When I work out, I'm trying to get a solid routine. It's mostly lighter weights and higher reps. Is there anything you'd recommend for guys in my age group? Greatly appreciated. I watch all the Think Big episodes on YouTube. Thanks.
I think you can train heavy. I think you've just got to be sensible about the volume of heavy work you do, and maybe stick to, say, one exercise heavy or one big compound heavy in a certain body part, just so you're not doing, set after set after set of heavy. Form becomes a big factor with age. quality of rep, quality of control, making sure there's no bouncing, making sure there's no momentum, because your body just can't take those jolts anymore.
Yeah.
I like PUT for the guys that are older, as a mix in there, not solely, but I think adding in a bit of TUT really helps get the muscle warm and allows you to stress the muscle in a way without overly stressing the joint.
What's TUT?
Time under tension. I like a 5 second down tempo.
I thought it was like tests on decanoate therapy.
Tread.
Yeah.
Test under silenate tread. That's what you thought, wasn't it? Or yeah. No.
TUT, test under decanoate therapy.
Time under tension.
Yeah.
Super slow reps allow you to maximize the stimulus out of smaller weights. But what they also do is allow you to focus load on the muscle and away from the joint. And you can do that. It takes a little bit of thought, takes a little bit of practice. But naturally, when we do a lift, we have three elements that really involved in the lift. We have a skeletal frame, we'll have our tendon attachment and ligamentous, and we have our muscle. With practice and correct form application, you can really minimize the amount of skeletal frame and ligament engagement you're getting and really focus much more load on the muscle. Then you can use less total load because a higher percentage of the load you're using is hitting the muscle. And just for a spitball argument, let's say you're bench pressing 200 kilo, but you're only getting 60% of that load hitting the muscle. If you can bench press 170 kilo, but get 85, 90% of that to hit the muscle, then you're getting more muscle stimulus, but less joint wear and tear because you're using a lower maximal weight. Yeah. So, that can come in, but it does take practice. It does take a bit of time. But I think the biggest thing is your approach to training and being not reserved, but being economical about what you do in the way you load your skeletal frame, the way you load your joints, because they're only going to take so much grief. And when we're 22, we could go in and throw weights around. We could bounce 200 plus kilo off his chest and that's a bit sore next day, and the day after be normal. You do it now and it's 2 weeks of, God, this so bloody hurts.
Yeah.
And it's just age, unfortunately. So it's just about being sensible. But it doesn't stop you training heavy, but I would say it stops you in how you apply that heavy training.
I'll just throw a couple things in because I like everything you're saying here. So if he's about 60, the amount of volume and load that he can handle now obviously isn't going to be as great as when he was younger. I know plenty of guys that are older that are doing too much. They're like in the gym all the time. They're training 6 days, 7 days a week, and you're not going to be able to make any progress that way. You're going to get a lot of overuse injuries, I would say, and back that off, get the most out of what you're doing so that you don't necessarily have to do as many sets. So I would actually even consider possibly going heavier, believe it or not, heavier, but getting more out of the weight that you're
the shorter duration of exposure to it.
Yeah, I found that with absolutely pristine control in my weight, my risk of injury goes down. And if I'm pushing to my ultimate max, I can continue to grow muscle, but I can only handle a very limited amount of that. At my ultimate highest strength, man, I dialed it all the way back to 1 day on, 2 days off. And I was at my strongest and at my biggest too, like now in my 40s, right? Which I tried all through my 30s to grow.
50s.
Yeah, no, in my 70s. So yeah, just throwing that out there to him is how many days are you training? Make sure that your intention is in those sets, and then ask yourself, like, well, what can I cut back? And also too, look at your technique. Like, are you like locking out your knees on the leg press and stacking your joints? Are you locking out hard? Or are you trying to use constant motion, constant reps, where you can kind of just keep the tension in the muscle versus like going to the joints? That'd be something I would add to it. Those are the first places. I think that anything else gear-wise or anything like that would be a Band-Aid. And hey, part of it is going to be wear and tear too. If he's been doing construction and he's 60 now, you're probably going to have some sore joints. Don't make it worse with the thing that you love, How about this one? Let's see. This episode has me wondering what a 4 weeks true TRT, 4 weeks of TRT plus would be like. Sorry, Dave, I know you hate that term. This could be a fun experiment for a few rounds. Because we were talking about like the short 2 week on, 2 week off cycles.
The thing is, if you do, let's say, let's be conservative, say TRT is 120 to 150 milligram a week,
Yeah.
and your TRT plus is 300 milligrams a week. So we're still low dose. We're not doing anything extraordinary. You do your 4 weeks of your TRT plus.
Right.
The first 2 weeks, if not 3 weeks of just your TRT, you're still going to be above range. You're not going to be back in range unless you do a clear break to allow your levels to drop down. As soon as you add TRT in, so as soon as you go, say, week 4, 300 milligrams, end of that week, start my TRT. The 300 level that you've achieved in your bloodstream is going to start to drop. But then you put your TRT in, it's going to push you back up a little bit. So let's do some spitball numbers. These are made up. These aren't accurate in any way. At the end of my 4-week period of 300 milligrams of test a week, I have a circulating nmol level of 60.
Okay.
Right? I'm dropping, if I don't do anything, I will drop that by 20 nmol a week. Right?
Okay.
So at the end of week 1, my nmol is 40. But then I put my TRT in, which takes me back up to 50. End of week 2, I'm 30. Then I put my TRT in, it takes me back up to 40. End of week 3, I'm 20. Then so I'm back into natural ranges. But then I put my TRT back in, and I'm now 30. So I'm just above range. So it's not till week 4 that I'm back into a TRT natural range. And then week 5, I'm starting my blast again.
So you're basically not really having much time off.
No. So it's not, I'm not, you can do what you want at the end of the day. There's no harm. Not so there's no harm. That's the wrong way of putting it. But, there's no judgment in if you want to do things a certain way. That's entirely your choice. But just make sure you understand what you're doing and how it affects you. So in that scenario, you're not returning to TRT. The only way you'd return to TRT would be 4 weeks of 300, 2 weeks of nothing, then my TRT, then back to my 4 weeks of 300. Now that would work in that you'd have a complete clear space. But if you're going to go straight from any sort of elevated level into a TRT, just be aware that your period of elevation is going to be extended.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that that's something to consider. All right, how about this one? We had another guy who was another older guy who says, love the podcast. Great job. Very educational. 65 years old, 140 pounds. I've been working out for 50 years plus. I've done 10-week cycles, maybe once or twice per year. It's been a year now since my last cycle of 200 milligrams of test and 200 milligrams of deca. Good gains. I'm ready to go again with the same cycle, but now I have EQ in mast. Your opinions. What does he mean, the same cycle? That's like, hey, Dave, I love chocolate cake. Every year I've eaten chocolate cake on my birthday. This year, I'm going to do the exact same thing and eat chocolate cake, only I have vanilla cake.
Yeah. He's going to need a test base with either of those compounds. He could easily replace the deca with the EQ or the deca with the mast. To be fair, I wouldn't run EQ and mast together, both even with the test base, because of the double anti-estrogen effect that's going to be there, because you're going to get a SERM-like effect and an AI effect. So I'd pick one or the other. He could run the test deca plus mast or test deca plus EQ if he's wanting to increase his overall dosing. Or he could do the test and either the EQ or the mast. That would be my opinion.
Wow, another older guy, Dave. And these are all
you
different
that
people too.
Him, you old fart.
It must be. It must be. They're like, this guy's 57. All right, I want to look like him. Or no, they're like, 57.
From the neck down at least.
Guy. There's guys that are like, I'm 65. I look better than this guy. This is awesome, man. I feel good about myself. I'll watch this show. So, all right. It says, I'm over 60 and I've been training for a whole year and hardly any results, but I've gotten very strong. I do everything correctly. My muscles just don't grow in bulk. Can you guys please help me? He said nothing about his diet. I'm very curious to know. I bet you. I
Yeah,
bet
I mean,
you.
my first 2 points would go to one: are you natural or are you on TRT? Because low hormones could be choking your progress. And I'm not saying you need to go on cycle, but you know, if you can at least maintain relatively healthy hormone levels, then that's going to help with your progress.
Yeah.
And the other thing is where your diet is, because even if your diet was crap, if you were eating in excess, you would have gained weight.
Yeah.
So if you've not
Yeah,
gained
there's
any
that.
whatsoever, then you've got no excess going in of calories. So one thing is you need more calories, but obviously they want to be a decent quality and a good source. So they would be the two things I'd be looking at. Where is my diet from a quality, but also from a quantity point of view? Because, you know, at the end of the day, if you're training hard, you're gaining strength, which means your training is stimulating progress, but you're not growing or gaining any physical size or weight, then you can't be eating enough calories. It's as simple as that. And then the other aspect is, where are you hormonally, and you know, do you need TRT? Are you using TRT? What's going on with that?
I'll say this, couple things. Number one, diet wise, if he's not getting enough food in, the place I would start is with your protein intake. I would shoot for, I don't even care what his body weight is. Let's just go to 2 grams per pound of actual body weight, not lean body mass, but start there. And if you just make that change and nothing else, I bet you that you would see some progress. You could do a lot more with the diet, that's for sure. I don't know what he's doing now though. Split that up into, 4 meals, 5 meals a day. You could make a couple of those meals shakes, 50 grams of protein per shake, but wherever he's at, figure it's probably going to be, 200, it's probably going to be anywhere from 300 to 400 grams of protein. 400 might be a little bit high, if he's 150 pounds, but so that would be, yeah. So somewhere in there though, 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per
Is your
pound. Let's
maths
go for that.
failing you today, mate?
I had to think about it. I was like, well, if he might not need that much. We'll go with 1.5 to 2 grams per, because normally I would say lean body mass, but in this case, I'm saying like total body weight, which if he's really obese, I started thinking, well, maybe that could be a problem there. You know what I mean? All right. And you can reach out to, somebody to coach you. Reach out to Dave or I. These are exactly the situations that we deal with every day. Let's see. Oh, this is an interesting point from Dan Smith. He's one of our longtime listeners. He's been following the channel forever. He said, my memory on shorter cycles back in the day where they were, because of the lack of gear, Muscle Media 2000 magazine used to run articles about short cycles. One article was about a guy who traveled and stayed in Mexico for 1 week every month, but didn't want to smuggle gear back into America. From memory, he would take something like one Sustanon amp on Friday night, another amp on Saturday and Sunday morning, something along those lines. And being a long acting, he'd have super physiological levels of testosterone for at least 3 to 4 weeks, and then he'd top up again on his next visit. That's interesting, huh?
There will be definitely loads of stories about people based around circumstances. I know, like offshore lads that do that sort of thing. You know what I mean? They'll load up when they're here because they've got 4 weeks offshore where they know they can't have everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not ideal, but you work around the circumstances you're given, don't you?
Feedback from the last episode on Anadrol profile. He said, it gives me bad headaches. I told him, hey, check your blood pressure, because that's one thing we didn't mention. It's notorious for high BP.
Yeah, sorry, it is. It is a bugger for blood pressure, yes.
Yeah, a couple people mentioned headaches.
No, I used to get splitting headaches off Anadrol.
Just finished a 10-week cycle of Anavart, 50 milligrams a day. Been off for about 3 weeks now, and boy, do I miss the pumps. You mentioned that a 10 milligram dose is effective and safe, but how long could you run 10 milligrams? I don't think that was us.
It definitely wasn't in that context.
Yeah, I wonder if he's mistaking us
Right.
for another
I'm going to say
another
something
channel.
now that might rattle a few cages.
Oh, Dave's gonna rattle cages today, guys.
Okay. And it's not directed at any one person, but that comment has stimulated it. If you've been off drugs for 3 weeks and you're now looking for justification to go back on drugs within 3 weeks because you missed the effect of the drugs, replace that drug with any other drug in the world, and you're talking about an addict behavior.
Yeah. I mean, it would be
No, I
negative
think
if
it's
you
important
have.
that you've got to develop a healthy relationship with any substance you use.
Yeah.
And that means you have to understand that time away is important in the overall management of your health with that substance. It's like alcohol. You want to go out and get drunk, no big deal, not going to do what I do that every bloody day, every bloody weekend, we're going to have problems.
And
You're
that's,
3
Dave, what I
weeks
want to
off.
throw in is that
Yeah.
that's the element isn't the wanting to do it. It's the willingness to do something that compromises your health. That's
Yes.
where the
It's
issue is.
so when you start with this chain of thought, you really need to step back and go, whoa, hang on a minute. This is, I'm looking for ways to justify more drug use. I've had a successful cycle. Yeah, the pumps have gone. Big deal. Train hard, work as hard as you can in this natural phase in getting to the stage you were with the Anavar, and then the next time you use drugs, you will see progression.
Yeah.
But if you step right back into some form of chemical crux, all you're going to see develop is a psychological dependency that I can't grow, I can't progress, I can't do anything unless I'm using drugs.
Agreed.
And that's the very thin end of a very slippery slope that I end up dealing with on the opposite end 2-3 years down the line, when people are actually facing problems but now have this real mental difficulty of stepping away from compounds because they have become so much of their identity.
Yeah.
I mean, I know someone who had a triple bypass because they couldn't do it. They couldn't leave who they felt they were away.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it is, but it's a fact. Now, this is very early days, and this may sound like a big overreaction, and potentially it is. But it also sends really strong warning alarms to me. Look, you're on the edge of something here, and it's very early in your usage. If you're already down that thought process, just take a moment, step back, and just reassess where you are. No anabolic use is safe in the true meaning of the term, but you can manage risks and you can minimize risks. But there's no safe. You can't just take an anabolic and forget about it. They have the potential.
Yeah. And the 10 milligrams Anavar, that wouldn't have been us. We've always said, I mean, 5-10 milligrams, it will be beneficial to enhance performance, to get a better pump, but it's not going to lay on a bunch of lean muscle tissue for somebody that wants to become a bodybuilder. It's just not the type of cycling that we would use. We've discussed it many times. We looked at that study that Scott Stevenson had. It was like 40 to 60 milligrams was the like optimal quote unquote dosing for growing muscle. That's not putting on lean tissue. That's not for feeling better in the gym, or being
No, I mean, if you want to
stronger.
feel better in the pump, take a pre-workout pump agent.
Yeah, there are a lot of things you could do. And heck, man, I would honestly say something like growth hormone would be a great consideration between cycles to be able to continue getting great pumps, not be dealing with the same things that you're dealing with from any anabolic steroids. So I'd consider something along those lines possibly. I have a question for you guys. Okay, back more about Anadrol, because we got some questions on that from last week. Would Anadrol be good for sprinting? I have a bottle at home. I do a lot of cardio-based, high-intensity workouts on 200 milligrams of test each years. Dude, Dave, I remember trying to run on D-ball. I got halfway around the block, and I couldn't walk any further because my calves were so pumped.
Yeah, there's a couple of properties around Anadrol that actually would make it sound attractive. But there is one big factor which you've just alluded to that makes it very unattractive. Anadrol increases red blood cells, so in a high cardio, high stamina sort of scenario, that's useful. That's beneficial to performance. The issue is going to be the horrendous pumps that Anadrol's going to cause, particularly like lower back pumps, which is probably going to make your physical performance impossible to actually even do. So yeah, I wouldn't be the drug of choice in my book personally. But I mean the RBC and hemoglobin effect would be beneficial, but the pump side and that element of it would be, and not just a slight, it'd be an extreme negative. I mean, I think you've experienced the back pumps where you walk 30 yards and you've just got to sit down because you're in that much pain.
Yeah, Anadrol, Depot, any of that stuff. Can you get a rebound effect from short cycles on, then off until clean? Yeah, absolutely. Dave, I've got a guy that I'm working with right now competing this weekend. He's used only TRT through the whole prep, okay? And then toward the end, last couple of weeks, he's like, hey, I can get some Winstrol. Do you think that would help? And I was like, sure, we throw it in. So all he's been on for the entire prep has been Winstrol for the last couple of weeks, plus his TRT. He is peeled. And now, in the off season, he wants to run a cycle. He hasn't really run a lot of gear before, but yeah. So we're going to go straight away. You know, obviously there's factors post show, but the reality is, yeah, it's all in the diet and your insulin sensitivity, right?
For rebound, yeah. It's and I think it's hard when you come off the back of a show prep because you want to eat what you've denied yourself for 16 weeks, 20 weeks, whatever it is you've been doing. But if you can control that rebound, the growth you can get off that can be as good as a large cycle. It's surprising how well you can manage a rebound and how much productivity you can get out of it if you can reverse diet. But it's challenging when you've been dieting for so long to then be back on diet and just slowly increasing your food. It's a grind, particularly if there's family pressures as well.
Yeah. So this guy says, my first cycle was back in 1983. It was 100 tabs of Syntrex Anapolin. He said they were 5 milligrams, not 50 milligrams. And I put on 15 pounds. I've never seen 5 milligram Anadrol before. Have you?
Yeah. It actually comes in as low as 2.5s medically.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen those. I thought that 50 was the popular number.
I think when you go back to the 80s, you're really looking now at the medications. You're looking at prescription drugs that were available on the black market. You're not looking at UGL.
But you said how much? What was the medical dosing? Didn't you have?
Oh, the medical dosing is high as a milligram per kilo. Yeah, even for children. But I have seen it. It is medically available from 2.5 upwards.
Okay. Oh, we have some Uncle Dave's wisdom questions here. We got a couple of them today. People actually asked you Uncle Dave's wisdom stuff. So we'll get to those. Let's see if we have time for a couple more. How long we been running here for, Dave? What's going
48.
on? 48. All right. 48. All right. Let's see if we can find one more good one, guys. And then we'll get to Uncle Dave's wisdom. Let's see. There's someone about fake gear. Let's see. Best test doses, not to lose muscle. Second cycle. Oh man. Oh, okay. Here's the guy we missed last week. I'm glad I saw this one, Dave. He said, hey man, thanks for mentioning me at the end of the show. Here's my question again, since you didn't get to it. Hi guys, love the show. I'm looking forward to every installment. I just had my bloods done by eval. Whole experience was superb. I have a question about gyno. As a teenager, I had really bad gyno for a considerable amount of time. Sore, large buildup of hard tissue in the nipple and breast size equivalent of that of my female peers. Oh, poor guy. Then after puberty, it just went. Now in my late 40s, I suffered from gyno. I feared suffering from gyno when hopping on gear, as I thought I would be genetically predisposed to problems. As it turns out, I can blast the test in Deca 1.5 grams plus with no AI and have never had a problem. Why do you think this is? And is it a common phenomena? Thanks to you both. Daryl, he says, I also have to ask Uncle Dave because I, for one, really appreciate his pearls of wisdom. With Dave being a man mountain and capable of using his size to his advantage and having no doubt been faced with adversity on many occasions, what would be a few tips on controlling temper and knee-jerk reactions? I'm quite a mellow fellow. But everyone has their breaking point, and I'd love to know what worked for Dave. Thanks again, and keep up the stupendous work.
So on the gyno front,
if I can read today, jeez,
the hormonal environment has obviously changed. Do you get people with high estrogen tolerances? Yes, I'm one of them. Used to be able to go stupidly high with estrogen with having no negative impacts from it. So that isn't, I wouldn't say it's common, but it's also not unusual. You know, there are plenty of people out there that do actually cope with high estrogen quite well. What's changed in the environment between then and now is very hard to say. You know, through puberty, we're developing both hormonally, but we're also developing hormonally receptor-wise as well. And obviously there was a definite amount of sensitivity for some reason at some point. Something you've grown out of, which is quite common in pubescent gyno, that the individual will grow out of the condition. So it's not always a preset for that. It's going to be a problem for the rest of your days. Unfortunately, we're not knowing where hormones were when you were a teenager. It's difficult to say what the driving factor is. It could have potentially been that DHT levels were low. DHT has a very anti-gyno action, naturally. Yeah. And obviously when you're using anabolics, you do have a level of increased DHT. So it may have been something along that lines. It may be that when you were younger, because DHT was low, that you've become particularly sensitive to DHT. So now when you use anabolics, the DHT levels that raise in line with your testosterone level are acting a little bit above and beyond from you, from a point of view of being anti-gyno.
Yeah.
But it is difficult to say without more data. Now, from a temper thing, I found personally that aggression for a large percentage of people comes from fear. Or a lack of feeling in control. Now, for me, when I was on gear and when I was big, because I felt capable, because I was strong, I was big, and I had the presence to be able to command the room, I didn't get aggression because I didn't find myself in situations where I was fearful or where I felt I was out of control. I always felt I could control the environment I was in, which meant there was no fear, so there was no reason to get aggressive. We're all going to lose our tempers at some point. It's part of nature, and sometimes it's quite healthy to do so. And I mean, I've had situations where I've had people taking advantage or taking the piss, and I've tried to stay calm and be calm, and they've continued to take the piss despite discussing the problems and explaining my position with it all and everything else. And it's only taken 5 minutes of me losing my temper for them to completely stop the negative behavior. I've not had to do anything physical. I've just had to verbally lose my cool with them. And then they're brand new. Because until I got to that point, they thought it was just words. There was never going to be anything to back it up. So it's difficult to judge when display of temper is necessary, because it reinforces the intention that you've expressed you are capable of, and when words are just enough. But I'd always start with the words. And I think also with being big and being strong, I also automatically had a reservation about deploying that.
I could imagine, yeah.
because she's like, oops. Yeah, a lot of damage done. And I've never looked particularly approachable. I have what most people call resting bitch face. So when I'm not actively engaged, I do look grumpy and miserable as shit. I don't look very approachable. Even now I'm 350 pound with a bald head, covered in tattoos. So I've spent a lot of my life. I'm not resentful of how I appear, but I've also been conscious of the fact that I've had to break the ice to do away with a preconception that people may have of who or what I am because of the way I look.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, the legal work and stuff like that has gone a long way into supporting that because of how I have to present myself and how I have to talk in those sort of situations. So, yeah, I mean, I would never, ever say get rid of all aggression because I don't think it's advisable. But I think you just need to learn when to deploy it. And even though it may be aggressive, it still needs to be controlled. When you lose your temper, when you lose aggression, when you're out of control is when the problems start. And that's usually born out of fear, but not necessarily a fear of being scared of something. It can be a fear of a lack of control or a fear of a lack of being able to control the environment in which you're in.
Yeah. Hey, listen, we've got 2 more Uncle Dave's advice questions. And
Right.
also, too, we are live, but for some reason, we're not seeing the comments. So we have
No,
a
I know.
whole slew of comments, man. We
I
got a
can't
whole
see
slew of
anything.
comments. Yeah, me either. But I just went to the page itself and I commented to say, hey, guys, we haven't been able to see the comments on this episode. I've been trying to do things a little bit different and improves the recording. My video looks crappy over YouTube right now, the live version. So anyway.
Yeah, it looked crappy to me as well.
Yeah, it's not just you, man. So, hey, real quick, I'll say this, man. I was never the biggest guy, even at my biggest. But because I was a very small human being, like 125 pounds when I started lifting, I've never felt big. And I've had people tell me, like, oh, I wouldn't want to mess with you, or like, nobody's going to want to mess with you, man. Even at my biggest, and I'd be like, I don't see it. Like, why's that? You know what I mean? So I never felt like the biggest guy. But I will say this, as a concealed carrier, I have to be really careful with my attitudes and my temper.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
honestly, man, the first time that I carried, I was like, oh shit, like I'm not going to flip anybody off on the road. You know what I mean? I'm not going to provoke anything because I don't want this to escalate in any way because I recognize the damage I could do. It's interesting that they have statistics on concealed carriers. Obviously, we have like a ton of FBI background checks and stuff to be able to do what I do. So like we are actually considered to be people who don't commit crimes. And now I recognize too, man, like this is a situation where like, there's no small fights in the world. And when you're a kid and you start picking fights, you don't expect it to end in the worst case scenario, but at this point I realize like, man, I don't want anything to go wrong. I want to avoid fights by any way. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody cuts me off and gives me the finger and then they want to get in a fight at the light. Yeah, my bad, man. You take care. You know what I mean? I'd much rather take that attitude than end up in a pissing match that literally changes my life forever,
I think you've also got to calculate what's the cost to you for that moment of outlet. What's the cost to you? And that's one thing I always ran in the back of my head is, right, if I do this, what's the cost to me? I mean, don't get me wrong, there were times when I went, fuck the cost.
Of course. 2 more. Jake has one for us. He says, Dave, I bet there's a lot of young people listening that could use some advice from a ladies' man like you that knows how to pick up a girl or a boyfriend. That's what you should do for Uncle Dave's wisdom sometime. I'm interested. I want to hear how you picked up your first boyfriend.
I have never been very good in the opposite sex attraction game. Never been very good. Always lacked confidence in that department, to be honest. But what I will say is that what do you want out of the partner? Are you wanting a relationship, or are you wanting a sexual encounter? If you're wanting a sexual encounter, politely, but just request it. It
Politely.
saves a lot of hassle.
Excuse me, miss. Would you have
Politely, but just, it saves a lot of hassle.
politely?
But if you're looking for a relationship, then I think the only way you're going to foster a relationship with somebody is if you are true to you. And I think the biggest problem is, and we all do this, we go out on the pull wearing our best clothes, in our best behavior, wearing possibly items of jewelry that we can't really afford, or so much makeup that we don't look like what we really do, and we give this best foot forward appearance to somebody, and yes, it attracts somebody, but they're attracted to who you're pretending to be. They're not attracted to you.
Yeah.
And then 2 months down the line, when you're sat there farting, picking your nose and flicking bogies over the room, they look across at you and like, what the hell have I got with? And it's like, well, no,
Or
this
the
is
next
what
morning.
I just lied. So I'm not saying you should be deliberately uncouth, but at the same time, I think you should be true to you, because otherwise you're just false advertising.
I like that.
And you're building a relationship that's going to be based on a lie. And with the best liar in the world, trying to maintain that long term, it's not happening. Where if you're honest and upfront, and you're truthful with your prospective partner, then they know what they're buying. They've got a proper inspection of the car they get in, and they can say, well, yeah, it's worth the money and the mileage, or it's not. And so I do think that when you're looking for a relationship, openness and honesty is key. And you shouldn't be ashamed of your past, because it is your past. And if a person can't accept your past, then they can't accept you. Then they're not the person for you, despite how attractive they may be, or how happy they make you, or how much they make you smile, or how much they give you a boner. It doesn't really matter if they can't accept you for you. If you have to pretend to be somebody you're not, then that isn't a relationship.
Yeah. I think that's all great advice, man. All right, one more. I can't believe it. We finally got some questions for Uncle Dave's wisdom today. All right, here's another one for Dave from Crohn's Lifter. I turned 30 this year, and I love bodybuilding more than ever. But I also love my life, and I'm struggling to balance work with passions and everything I want to get out of the next 30 years or so. I cut it off. It says read more. How does he suggest creating the right balance? And he might have said more after that, but I think he probably said, I love the show, especially Scott. Dave sucks, but I listen to him anyway. Yep, those are his words. I read it.
Yeah. Difficult. And the reason it's difficult is that if you want to succeed at something, as in truly succeed at something, there's a strong chance it's going to take 75% of your effort. So it doesn't leave a lot for everything else. So if you've got multiple avenues you want to pursue, there's two ways of looking at this. One is periodizing.
There you go.
The effort on the pursuit. So for argument's sake, I'm 30 years old, I'm into bodybuilding. For the next 5 years, I'm going to really focus on that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to completely neglect everything else, because you still need to work and have a career and everything else. But, I'm really going to put a lot of my spare time into bodybuilding. But that means you're not going to have time for other factors. And then you go at 34, 35, bodybuilding stops, and I'm going to focus on settling down, or I'm going to focus on my family, or I'm going to focus on my career. Or the other thing is to accept that you are not going to be 100% at everything, because it's just not possible. So you create a balance of what level of effort you're willing to give to the particular pursuit. So it might be Monday to Friday lunchtime, I am a bodybuilder. I live, breathe bodybuilding. But then Friday afternoon and the weekend, I'm dedicated to my family. Or I'm dedicated to longboarding, or I'm dedicated to macrame or whatever it is your other thing is. Or it could be another switch where Monday to Thursday it's work, 100% focus on work, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday it's bodybuilding. So you might have to do some sort of structuring. I'm not saying exactly like that, but some sort of structuring where you devote time to one act and time to another. It might be that, you know what, I'm going to get up at 5, I'm going to train before work, and I'm not even going to turn my phone on or look at it till after I finish training. So my training in the morning is completely bodybuilding focused. Diet's easy to fit in around things. That actually isn't that hard. We just make it hard. And then I'm going to focus on my work to a set time, and then after that time I'm going to focus on family time. And I think you sometimes have to be that structured. You have to be that divisionalized to get it to work to some degree. I struggle. I've always struggled. Everything tends to merge. I mean, here I am away, supposed to be family time, on holiday, and this isn't a dig at doing a podcast, but obviously I've still got client check-ins to do. I've still got eval work to do. And I try to create a balance where Monday to Wednesday I work till about 12, 1 o'clock. Then I take 2, 3, 4 hours off, and then I'll do an hour and a half in the evening to catch up. And then the rest of the week I'll just try and fit it in on the phone as I can in and around whatever we're doing. And Shah's really, really tolerant of it, because there's points when even I get pissed off with it, and it's like, on holiday, I just want a break.
Yeah.
But I've never quite got the balance right. But when I was into bodybuilding, it was bodybuilding. And as a result, everything else did suffer. So when I stopped with the bodybuilding, I focused more on family life and I focused more on work. But that meant the bodybuilding stopped. But that's me. I am a bit all or nothing in what I do.
Yeah. So for better or worse.
Yeah, I sort of have to. It's just how I work. So it's like I struggle with the current situation, which is working till lunchtime, because I'm doing the work and I'm thinking, oh, I can't be asked for this because it's lunchtime. I've only got to go till lunchtime. Where if I know I'm working all day, I'm into it, I'm doing it, I'm focused, I'm on with it. But when it's broken up like that, I struggle with it. I either sort of need complete time off or full bore on work. I'm quite happy to work 7 days a week. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. I'm happily crack away at that. But if you tell me that you're having 2 afternoons off, then I'll struggle because I've got this mix now and my brain doesn't like it.
Well, listen, I'll say this. I'll add something here, Dave, is that except for competing, when you're competing, especially toward the end, things do get really difficult. And I would say that I've actually used I've used a not a quote, but something John Meadows had said. I asked him about this once, and he said, I tell my wife that last 4 to 8 weeks, it is going to have to be more bodybuilding. I have to make that the priority because that's the point where things are hard. You're not going to have as much energy. But then after that, and so they have an understanding, they go into that knowing his wife knows that this is what he's going to have to do. But then after that, he doubles down on giving attention to the family. That's what he said he did. And they had an agreement going into that. So outside of that last 4 to 8 weeks of a contest prep, I don't understand why it is so much work to be a bodybuilder, because you can make all the progress that you need in 4 days of training per week. Like if you really want to pare it down, even 3 days of training, if that style of training works for you. The food you have to eat anyway. If you love bodybuilding, then it's not necessarily going to be convenient, but you can make it work while doing everything else. Everything else in your life. So I don't believe that it has to be this or bodybuilding. I've heard people say like, oh no, man, I need to spend, more time. And yeah, I agree, man. You can't neglect your family. You can't neglect your job, but you never should have to begin with, is my opinion.
I think sometimes the problem isn't so much what you can do, it's the perception of the people around you. So like when I was pushing hard, I had no issue with sticking to the diet. I had no issue with eating the food and carry the food with me, but Shah hated it.
Well, then that's a relationship thing. And
she didn't like the fact that we couldn't sit down and have a normal meal together in her head. And it's like, well, what difference does it make if I'm eating chicken and rice?
Yeah.
And if you're eating a burger and chips, what's the difference? She wanted me to share in her activities, and that's where the problems were. It wasn't that I couldn't eat the food. It was that the partner's relationship was struggling with my adherence to that program. So sometimes it's not difficult in a sense of you being able to do it. It's difficult in a sense of it working within your relationship.
I think that's something as a coach, this is something I try to really manage. I didn't pay as much attention to it, but in the past, but now I want somebody to have the experience where they're integrating bodybuilding into their lives. I think it's important that they have talks with their significant other so that everybody's on the same page. And I think that, you know what, there's no reason that for most of the year that you should be able to have an off-plan meal. You know, let's say that you guys like to always go out on Sundays and do a certain thing. Well, like, let's make that work and we can figure out your food to accommodate that. Maybe that might mean that you're not eating quite as many carbs on, your non-training days to offset some additional food that you're getting on that day. I think that there is a way to make that work. At the end of the day, I feel like people sometimes, like, it to me, sometimes it's a cop-out, honestly, because then
I can see where you are with that. Yeah.
Then what ends up happening is they're like, well, I gotta, I want to dedicate this time to the family. You are important too. You're important. Yeah. And if you taking care of yourself is important. And I'm not saying like, oh, bodybuilding is a selfish thing and you need to be selfish. No, you need to think of everybody else, but you need to make it so that you are responsible for all your stuff. They're not responsible for cleaning out your dishes in the sink. They're not responsible for making your foods. They're not responsible for keeping you on time. And if you happen to go a couple hours over on a meal because you're out with family, you need to be responsible for like sucking it up and dealing with that. Don't make any of bodybuilding their problem. You know what I mean?
If I was 10 minutes late for a meal, I was one ratty, grumpy asshole.
Yeah, and nobody wants to be around that, man. So it's
no, like, I know, and it is. I was so programmed to eat that if anything knocked me off that schedule, I struggled.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I wasn't like that too at times, man. Like, this is me reflecting and what I had learned.
It's easier when we sat where we are now, isn't it? Because we're not in the thick of it anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's.
I do have clients that do it though, and it was something I was able to achieve. My first couple contest preps, I was a bear to be around. I'm sure of that, but I think it's important that we learn to make it. If at the least we're not taking away from the people that love us. And if we can do that, that means like you doing that is what loving bodybuilding is all about and keeping it in your life. I used to think years ago, Dave, that like, oh man, and this is back when Gold's Venice was something like, oh dude, to be a pro and like just hanging out in Gold's all day and training and taking a nap and going to the firehouse, eating clean food, staying on track with my meal, blah, blah, all of that. That's like hardcore bodybuilding. No, dude, hardcore bodybuilding is competing at Masters Nationals, having a family with 3 or 4 kids, you know what I mean? Having a full-time job. Managing all that stuff, still going to the family picnics like my client Nick Ficolo did this past year. He nailed it, man. And guess what? His family was utterly thrilled for him when he got his pro card. Like, they were excited versus the opposite being like, yeah, you won your show, but you're also 2 steps away from a divorce,
Yeah. I've got a client. He don't compete. He's probably spent less than 2 weeks in his own home in the last year.
Okay.
He's a bodyguard and he runs a team, and he is constantly on the move, constantly in different countries, and it is literally lottery. Where are you this week? What have we got? What food can we work with? Can we trade?
Okay.
And he still managed to make very solid progress.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still sitting at 280 pound, still runs regularly. He's not shredded, but under the circumstances, the fact that he makes any progress at all is outstanding. And it can be done. It can be done, but there will. I think sometimes as well, and I've been guilty of this myself, where you fall into it has to be extreme, it has to be this. I have to do this, that, and the other. And there is an element of balance can be achieved. It all depends on what level you're looking to achieve and where your genetics put you in your ability to achieve that.
True.
Good genetics make it a lot bloody easier.
Yeah. Well, listen, Dave, I appreciate you taking the time on your vacation again to hang with us in
Pleasure.
France. Dave Crosland from France. And we'll make sure everything's fixed next time, guys, so that you'll be able to hang with us on the live stream. On that note, I'm working on getting our video podcast available at Spotify, because as of right now, Spotify is just audio. But I'm going to start boosting up our engagement at Spotify. So definitely comment over there. Follow us on Spotify. We need a second outlet. You know, I'm sure you guys saw that anabolic bodybuilding is down right now. Whew, shout out to Paul, man, and I wish him the best with it. It's a scary thing that we are in this position we are. We are literally trying to help, you know, and we don't want to add negativity or you know, add anything that could hurt people with what we do. I wish that YouTube could understand that, you know. But definitely make sure that you follow the backup channel, follow the YouTube Think Big YouTube live channel. You know, that's where we air the live podcast as we record them. That will be our fallback. Spotify will be our fallback. We have our Rumble. We'll be posting over there. And of course, the show's always out on audio podcast. And join the Think Big Facebook group. Facebook isn't awesome. They seem to be editing and deleting some of our posts. It's another meta app, but hey, you know, it's something we have. We've got over 2,000 people in the community there. We'd love to have you guys there, especially if things go dark. You won't lose contact with us, Dave, right?
Yeah, true.
Go to evalbodyanalysis.com. Get your lab work done by Dave. Go to Strom Sports Nutrition. Get good health supplements, great health stacks, especially if you're on cycle. Supplementsource.ca for Canadians. They have great deals that change week to week, like closeout, blowout deals. Real good deals. TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there for all your basic bodybuilding supplements like creatine and intra-workout and protein powder. Every protein powder you can think of. Tons of great flavors. Use our code THINK. Patreon, guys, we'll knock out our Patreon questions next. So definitely fill us up with questions over at Patreon, guys. And Dave, are you taking new clients while you're on vacation? Or are you holding off till you get home?
I am. Yeah,
okay. Okay. Hit them up over on social media. We'll have that linked below, guys. And you hit me up, mcnallydiets@gmail.com. And for another episode of the podcast, we will see you soon. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Dave.
Pleasure.